Hello, this is John Feldt, and this is the Weekly Water Outlook National Edition for June 23rd, 2013. Well, here's the precipitation that was observed across the nation last week. You might remember I mentioned that the southwest U.S. would be very dry with no rain, and you can see that most of the southeast U.S. or southwest U.S. received no precipitation. However, most of the central part of the nation into the southeast U.S. received at least scattered precipitation, looking very much like a summertime pattern with areas of yellow right next to areas of blue, so areas receiving 2 inches or more rain next to areas receiving less than a ½ inch of rain. I think a couple of the major patterns just to sort of point out for the last week: very dry in this region, enhanced precipitation, organized precipitation in the upper Midwest, and then a widespread area of scattered type precipitation over the southeast U.S. I also want to mention in the western part of Texas and Oklahoma, been very dry, and this was welcome rain in that area, as well as western parts of Nebraska and South Dakota. If we look at the surplus or deficits for the past 7 days, areas in blue received amounts of rain that are surplus, and areas in red are deficits. And I want to show you in particular areas that have been experiencing high soil moisture or very dry. These are very persistent patterns. An area of green are generally wetter than the 10-year mean, and areas in yellow are generally drier than the 10-year mean. So we have very much an area of the west and southwest U.S. Being extremely dry as far as topsoil moisture goes, and then anywhere from the central part of the U.S. east is generally topsoil is above normal. We can see this from the maximum consecutive dry days as well. If we look at the upper Midwest, that area in blue, that's only 3 to 5 consecutive dry days in the last 30 days. So pretty much you haven't had much more than 2 or 3 days in a row without some rain. But look over the southwest U.S., Southern California, Arizona, surrounding states, greater than 26 days consecutive dry days. So generally, as you get into the darker blue, medium to darker blue, those are areas that are generally getting excessively wet, and areas in brown are excessively dry. But you can see the southeast U.S. has really been in balance. Look at that area of sort of a light green, and that's one area that's been somewhat in balance, and that looks like that will continue. As far as stream flow goes, sort of the same pattern, west versus east. Blue is stream flow that's above normal. Dark blue is well above normal. And then the oranges and reds are well below normal stream flow. So this gives you a picture of that very much dividing line between west and east. Now here's the latest jet stream. I don't want to focus on this too much, other than just sort of say it's moving in the western U.S. and sort of curving up towards the north, because we're going to see some very big changes this week into next. And we're getting into a highly amplified pattern that's going to give us more distinct type precipitation and temperature trends. The more amplified the pattern is, the stronger these trends will be. So the blue jet stream is early this week. There's somewhat of a slight bowing in the west and a slight dip in the east. By late this week, the green, you can see it's much more bowing in the west, much more trough or dipping in the east. And then I even put next week, look at the jet stream in gray. That goes well into the Canada and then dips well into the southeast U.S. So we're going to be getting into a much more amplified type pattern. Generally speaking, under that area of high pressure, we're looking at hot and dry. Under the area of low pressure, showers and storms, and cooler than normal temperatures. This pattern looks pretty persistent. Looking out 6 to 10 days, I don't see a whole lot of change. The red dashed lines indicate positive anomalies or pressure higher than normal. Blue is lower than normal, and that shows that the core of high pressure will be over the western U.S. and the core of lower than normal pressure over the Great Lakes region. So precipitation over the next 7 days will be highly dominated by this jet stream. Like I said, over the west and south, it's going to be dry due to the bulging ridge of high pressure north, And then over the eastern U.S., primarily the Ohio Valley up into the northeast U.S., we're going to experience above normal precipitation with that area of low pressure transporting pockets of energy into that region. Now the southeast U.S., I said, was somewhat in balance. Looks like that will continue to have scattered daily thunderstorms that'll keep soil moisture up on the high side of normal, and in some areas even significantly above normal. Now let's take a look at the 6 to 10 day outlook and the 8 to 14 day outlook. When I look at these maps, I'm going to be looking at general trends. And like I said, that upper jet stream doesn't change a lot, so I think the general trends we're looking at are dry over the western U.S., wet over the eastern U.S., and sort of a transition over the middle part of the U.S. with perhaps more normal type precipitation over areas east of this line, below normal precipitation west of that line. If we look at 8 to 14 day, we see these general trends continue. I wouldn't get too hung up with specifically where they're at. We do see a sort of an anomaly over the south here. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. That would be very welcome if that did occur. But right now it looks like the ones with the highest confidence is generally dry over the west and generally wet over the east. As far as soil moisture changes, you can see they correspond with the heavier precipitation. This is just week 1. Brown areas are drying, blue areas are getting wetter. So the takeaway points this week, pretty straightforward. Ridge building in the west, trough building in the east, hot and dry over the west, wet and perhaps cooler than normal temperatures over the east. Now there will be some exceptions to these general rules. I will be talking about that this week. Working on my newsletter, I'm going to be talking about feedbacks and the role of feedback loops over the summertime months. I do see some developing that could be impacting precipitation over July and August. Hey, thanks for listening. I will be talking with you again next week.